I got carded last week. And the interesting part was I got carded for non-alcoholic beer. I said, oh, there's no alcohol in it. And the young woman gave me, have you run into this Gen Z stare thing? It's like they sort of look at you just like blankly, like you're an idiot. And she was like, it doesn't matter. I was like, oh, okay.
What's beneath the stare? What is the source of the righteousness?
Contempt.
Is this the We Hate Gen Z segment of the show?
Welcome to People vs. Algorithms, a show about Gen Z stares and connecting the dots between technology, media,
curious.
Culture. That's Troy Young. You're joined. He's going to be talking about the singularity later. And live from Sonoma, where they don't yet have a Waymo's to take children to school, is Alex Schleifer. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
I'm actually curious where the stare comes from, and why it's a generational stare. Is it that they grew up on the internet sort of learning to assert, themselves in any way they want, independent of any kind of ageist or social hierarchy? Like what is underneath of it is what I'm curious about.
I mean, I don't know. I don't like to generalize.
Because it's real. I know it's real, bro.
But I will.
Real? I mean, didn't young people always kind of have a way of just like looking at you like they don't understand what's going on?
It's the new eye roll. It's just a rebranded eye roll. I think every generation has their signals to older generations.
More than that. It's more than that. Gen Z hates you.
And often they're right.
Gen Z hates you, Brian. And also,
I get that.
Pass as a boomer, so they hate you even more.
That's not true.
Yeah, they don't like you.
I think you're telling on yourself.
Before the Gen Z stare, I used to call this the Facebook stare when I used to work with people at Facebook and tell them I didn't want to A/B test everything we build, and I would get that stare back. Like a stare of non-comprehension of what I was talking about. Why would we want to build a good product if we could just shove shit in people's faces and see what works better?
I actually prefer the Gen Z stare to that makes sense. So that's good. So it's progress.
Yeah, I mean, in one case, Alex, you're trading the sort of elitism of the designer for the practical kind of mechanical approach of a product manager. They both have their own arrogance, Alex.
Well, I mean, yes, I think that's true.
We should start on a less lighthearted note. It is a media program, but the Charlie Kirk killing yesterday, which is just shocking. And I'm not going to get into, this is going to set off a incredible amount of finger pointing and reductive assertions about about what is to blame for this. It's a whole mix of different things. But one of the things that I thought of with Charlie Kirk, because I was interested in him for a while as, kind of a figure of this information space. And I think one of his sort of legacies is that he was like a leading figure in this, where he had Rush Limbaugh as a role model, back in like high school. And I remember living through the Rush Limbaugh and the talk radio era of conservative talk radio, which, kind of informs me because the scourge that was claimed to have been like on culture, I think we see repeated in this far more decentralized and fractious media environment, aka the information space. But what I found interesting is that he occupied a place where he was an energetic actor within politics with Turning Points USA, but he was also a media entity unto his own with his podcasts and with particularly his viral social media clips and with those, college tours and rallies and that he got killed at one of those. And he was a master debater. And we see this across the information space, how this debate format has become, Jubilee, I think is at the forefront of a lot of this, but being able to see off critics.
Jubilee, the media company?
Yeah.
And the 20X versus 1Y type thing.
Yeah. And there is this, and he really mastered that. He was a natural, I think, at a lot of the contours of the information space and was extremely successful at it and prove that you could kind of straddle the line between being a media figure and also being involved actively. And I think we're seeing this across the board. I don't know if you've noticed, like but David Sachs is back on the nearly unlistenable All In far more regularly, because I think they realized is that's sort of part of the power. Whereas before you had to do one or the other, and Trump has filled his cabinet with people who have one foot in the information space as media figures.
I mean, literal podcasters, right? Running.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was a podcaster of, he has the number one podcast right now. It's now at the top of.
No, I'm saying he's putting people in the office that are
I just mean Charlie Kirk now has the number one podcast.
Yeah.
It was extremely disconcerting. I found it.
Political violence is not a good thing.
And the one thing I did think, and it will connect to this singularity spiel, is when kind of fantasy and action, reality and fiction kind of blend in violence. And, you're a media figure and a political figure and a policymaker and an influencer of people and a convener. And if
he also sold hot sauce,
but it's sort of like, I don't know, as your sort of fantasy world blends with reality, the idea of taking someone out is the physical manifestation of the ultimate debate move.
But we don't know. I mean, let's just pump the brakes. We have no idea what.
I'm not suggesting that, like, the nature of the perpetrator in any way. I'm only saying that I feel like we're living in this kind of world where our connections virtually blend with the physical, and in some ways ending up in tragedy, in violence. And I think it's sort of like when people get on the wrong side of reality and they start to kind of blend this world of fantasy with, things that hurt people or change lives, it's a problem. And I think it's a kind of facet of the world that we live in terms of how we're connected digitally, virtually, and physically.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think we can apply a lot of this to the media landscape, but like John Lennon was shot by someone, I don't know. It feels like
It's a little different, I would say, Alex. I mean, political violence is different than regular violence.
Right, but we're saying
they're all tragic.
We don't know what it is. We don't know what it is.
But right? I think we can say this was political violence. He was a political figure. We've seen a slate of political violence.
Shot in a political moment. Yes. Yeah. Political violence.
And so, yes, I mean, it could have been a disgruntled ex-employee. But I think
it could have been a fan. I mean, I don't know. I think people find violence has been happening for a while. I don't know if it's escalated, but
right. But I even to kind of connect it in a bit of a dubious way with that Tucker Carlson, Sam Altman interview. Right?
Remarkable.
Remarkable
stats that came out of that.
So for those, let me just set this up a little bit. I mean, This is a definition
of connecting activity, like it's connecting, suicidal outcomes with, AI interactions, and then also accusing. Well, I mean, that one was like clearly
he went right up to the line. He kept saying, "I'm not
Tucker
accusing
Carlson
you."
is truly the modern Loki.
But describe what happened, because you're kind of jumping ahead.
Okay, hit it, Brian.
Yes.
You describe it.
So basically, this is, to me, I file in and be careful what you wish for, because a lot of the sort of like, tech oligarchs have really been cheering this decentralization of media where they don't have to go to the quote unquote mainstream media. The advantage of the mainstream media is you start to find out it's like they're house cats a lot of times. They're not feral. When you get out into the decentralized world where Tucker is just asking questions, they're feral cats. They're out at the scrapyard, and they're coming back missing tufts of fur. And so Sam Altman went on to Tucker Carlson's very popular show, reaches a totally different demographic, and it kind of went off the rails with Tucker really coming at him for both whether AI was leading people to, commit suicide, whether AI, he was really harping on, whether it was woke, right, which was expected. But then it took a turn where he basically kept asking Sam Altman about this former OpenAI whistleblower employee who committed suicide. And Tucker has been talking with the family and is just asking questions and absolutely not accusing Sam Altman of being involved, but he's found it very curious and believed the police should be speaking to Sam Altman about this. Sam Altman at some point was like, I've never done an interview where I've been accused of murder before. This was, I don't know, in the past you would call it remarkable TV. It was these days, like it was just like another thing in the feed. Go on, Troy.
Or there's nothing quite like a conspiracy theory, to surf upon to get engagement, and no one understands that better than Tucker, right?
Yeah, yeah. He's selling a lot of his own like knockoff sins off this too.
Yeah.
He genuinely seemed happy in his happy place.
Well, he's good at what he does. I mean, this is like also part of the, the jousting. I mean, you do not want to get into the cage with these guys. Like, I don't know who stands up, who volunteers for these Jubilee things, because they will rip your face off. Go on.
What was underneath it was interesting too, where the whole sort of premise of AI as this kind of appropriation layer on top of all things, right? It was based on fair use. That was the individual's contention, like that basically OpenAI was stealing. And that was his whistleblower complaint, right? And that underneath of that is of such consequence for an immense amount of money globally, right? Like and the power of these firms that this person, it's conceivable that they should be killed. Again,
we're getting into the fantasy blending into
I'm talking
the
what
reality.
Tucker Carlson was playing with.
I know. That's where we don't even, I feel like we're in this period where so much unreal stuff can seem plausible that we just sort of gloss over when people talk about rocket attacks on data centers and stuff.
Yeah, but because, Brian, we're living in times where unreal times is possible.
Yeah.
I think we lived through a pandemic. We had 2 Trump presidencies. We have podcasters running the FBI or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we're like, that's weird, right? And it's just, and so therefore, I think people's compass has been, distorted a bit. Like it's hard to, even I, like with some of the, I'm really not a conspiracy theorist, but like, with the Epstein stuff and stuff like, you're like kind of like, that's kind of, but I mean, I like coffee.
There is some strange things here.
Yeah, exactly. And I like, Coffee Zilla, which were fans on the thing, which was doing some really good reporting. I think has turned full conspiracy theorist. I can't listen to his stuff anymore. But it's happening to everyone because in a time where so many crazy things happen, everything becomes plausible, right? Or fake, right? Like
it's all a part. I'm sorry, guys. It's all a part of the great media singularity.
Go, Troy.
Well, I don't know. I was just walking the dog or something, and I have a friend who's into Ray Kurzweil that I had dinner with last night. And Kurzweil famously talks about the technological singularity where humans and machine consciousness merge. And it just struck me that there's a parallel thing happening in media. And I do at my maybe best and weakest, is I started to sort of think about the convergence of media types and the things that define them, right? So what are media types? Well, to me, in a simple way, there's sort of like live, right? News, whatever that is, live. There's news, there's lifestyle, there's sport, there's entertainment, there's gaming. And I would even argue there's sort of commerce, which is a transactional media type. And they used to all have their own rules, right? One was about reporting or facts, and one was about entertainment and fantasy and storytelling. And those are at different, and engagement, I would argue, with gaming and commerce. And there are different ends of this continuum. And you can see, as Alex has said many, many times, that like everything is entertainment now, right? But there's this conversion between media types where, we're talking about ESPN and CNN wanting to be like the New York Times. We're talking about the New York Times wanting to be like NPR. We're talking about the convergence of all things, sort of media types into this kind of newfangled blob that is, video plus image plus text plus meme, measured and driven by its ability to drive engagement. And it just seems to me that, like, on one end, the currency that drives entertainment, for example, is fandom, right, at its very best, at its most engaging. And that increasingly becomes the energy behind news, right? News is tribal. And so all of these media types are sort of compressing. And where do they compress? Well, they come out in feeds. Everybody wants to own a feed that delivers this sort of singular new media type, right? And so obviously there's the X feed, the Instagram feed, the Facebook feed, the TikTok feed, the Snapchat feed, the LinkedIn feed. You know, like Substack wants a feed. Netflix dreams of having a feed that blends consumer-generated content and games and entertainment into a feed. Robinhood wants to be your financial feed, right? And, you know, a gamified financial feed. So, you know, we have this illusion where we think, well, that's not quite true because media is kind of massively nicheified, right? Like we actually have more, you know, sort of segments and types of content that deliver against your own passion points or your unique needs. But those are just the sort of personalized dimensions that fit into this, you know, algorithmic driven feed system that represents the singularity. And I just think that what it is the singularity is you and your relationship with the network. And, you know, that is a kind of modern reality in media where the distinction between types and the things that define different media types sort of iconically, right? The difference between entertainment and news, it's all converging. And it's converging in a media type and it's converging in a delivery system. And inside of that, I don't even know what you're seeing because, you know, we're connected, but we're also, you know, supported through our own unique drip feed system. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a concept that does explain a lot of what's going on in media, where the old notions of type are no longer useful in thinking through the difference between you know, media companies. And I think there's probably consequences for, you know, media talent, right? Like we all want journalists now to be characters, like they're stuffed in a Disney suit at the park. You know?
Well, I think what you're getting at is the feed itself is really problematic in many ways. I hate to be always negative, but you know,
we had a very positive episode last week, so it's time to.
You know, because the feed itself, it forces each piece of content to compete with the other piece of content. And that inevitably is going, and when engagement is the currency, that inevitably is going to lead to a race to the bottom. That is why being bombastic is rewarded. Being oppositional, having enemies is rewarded. This WWF kind of, I guess it's WWE now. This WWE style of like communication that has taken over. It's basically responding to the incentives of the feed powered by algorithms. And the way that you win in that environment is, and I think that sort of inevitably, maybe this is Marshall McLuhan too, like it just sort of leads you back to where we are now with how information is produced.
I mean, I think this is right. And I think that we're in a place now where distribution really only flows through a single model, which is the feed, right? Even in gaming, you know, like the Steam feed or whatever is recommended is what you're fighting for. And it does change the way you think about content, and it does kind of force you to play in every field, right? Like it has to be news and it has to be entertainment and you have to go into commerce. Like everybody's doing a little bit of everything. And that does change things. And it also, because it's like such a visual medium, much of the distribution piece is such a visual medium, it does also change the type of content you make and why you make it, right? You want to, like, it's even changed, like this massive change with comedians, with the way they do their shows, because they started figuring out that hecklers were a great way to get clips in, and it's changed comedy. And then comedians started talking about current events, and there's like fewer and fewer just plain joke comedians.
Yeah. Well, that's the
around.
combat.
Like everybody's becoming everybody's becoming a pundit, basically, right? Everybody's becoming a pundit that applies their skill to everything.
And look, combat does well in feeds, without a doubt.
Yeah. But where does this end, Troy? Do we have a media terminator?
But I just wonder, Troy, does this like bifurcate, right? Like where you have, I just think that inevitably people have more agency a lot of times than tech people pretend. And that some people, I don't know, maybe not the majority, will kind of opt out and will return to a packaged media format because they realize that the serendipity afforded by these feeds is not really serendipity.
Yeah, I think
it's
that's
manipulation.
right. I think that's right, but I think it's also like vinyl.
Yeah, vinyl's a nice.
Well, how
nice
much
business.
like vinyl? The thing is, how much like it's not. I mean, it's great, but how much like vinyl does it get?
It's like vinyl, except people forget how to listen, right? That's the problem. It's that you don't go from being a kind of kinetic, feed consumer to being a long form media, consumer.
But that's the bifurcation.
Once they're lost to the feed, it's bye-bye.
But you could also say, Troy, that like media has always been an abstraction of reality that is created in a certain way to attract eyeballs, where the incentives are always a little awkward because, you need to be supported by either people buying your advertising, which pushes a dynamic where you create content for commerce. And therefore, media has always kind of been funneling everything into either a single point of view during like the monoculture of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and it's just different now, right? And maybe it's a little bit of that thing where people say, music used to be good when ugly people were allowed to make it. Like, it's just there's a different set of characteristics that you need to participate in the media, and the audience needs to build a different set of, the way they kind of train themselves to scrutinize it in a different way. But the monoculture is definitely out.
Yeah, I'm not
saying... The idea
of
categories is definitely like on its way out. That's true.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's, that it represents anything apocalyptic. I'm saying I'm making an observation that the way that we defined media and the forces behind it are collapsing. And you can take from that what you want. If you're running a media company, you might do the obvious things and think, we don't hire journalists, we hire talent, right? If you are thinking about, how you invest and you are a maker of long form entertainment, you might reallocate money and resources to different types of entertainment, right? If you're thinking about, like, everything is now driven off of a news peg. So you're sort of, I guess maybe Hollywood always responded to cultural patterns very quickly, now even faster, where entertainment and news kind of collide. And of course, when you squish this giant big ball of stuff that is media, you're always going to get, people that opt out. You're always going to get counter trends. You're always going to get those things. But I think if you look at it holistically, it's an interesting way to observe what's gone on in media.
Yeah, it's funny because I think the feed, I keep coming back to the feed, but like I feel like the feed originally was a really good force function. I remember just being on the B2B side, I would say, well, the feed just ended this idea where people would have a different expectation of the content they read to stay like informed in life and be entertained, and the things that they consume for their work lives. Like those things all sort of blended together in the feed. And so you're competing. And so that was good. It was a force function that, like, if you're going to get someone's attention in the feed, you have to compete. So that part was good. I just think it ended up leading to an inevitable race to the bottom. I think it is going to be difficult for a lot of media companies to do it all, to win at the feed and to win in packaged media. I think overall, one of the sort of lessons of the last year was that a lot of publishers in particular tried to do too many things at once, and they had already complicated businesses that became even more complicated, and there was even more misalignment. So I kind of admire, in this sort of niche era, people that opt out of even trying to compete on the feed. I'm going to like a niche magazine conference this weekend with all these little niche magazines that are hoping for a little bit of a renaissance. And I think it's not like going to be a giant area. And most of these business models are, fronts for better businesses like commerce or events or brand activations. But I think it's going to be a vibrant area. It's going to be growing, because to compete in that, like that feed environment is just becoming really perilous.
It is, but it's also, I think it's just become, well, I have two questions. First of all, Do you think like advertising and marketing is getting blended into that singularity? Because it just feels like marketing itself and marketing people I talk to feel like they're getting sucked into it.
How do you mean?
Well, where it's all about the feed, right? And there's no longer kind of a clear distinction between like content and marketing and news and marketing, and marketing has to be responsive to news, so it appears in the feed, right? It's the kind of the framework for distribution of nearly everything now is a feed somewhere. Those feeds are owned by like 4 companies, right? And if you want to get any attention, if you're in the attention economy in any way, whether you're a media company, an advertiser, somebody advertising stuff, a marketing executive, you're in that business. You're in that attention business, which is,
I think you guys drove by 2 of the items in our agenda. And one is the vinyl equivalent in the publishing world is tech meme. And tech meme, and you also highlighted, Brian, one that I actually like, which is a stripped down list of things to read every morning called Media Star. Just tells you what's, a list of
old school link dump.
So easy to use and useful.
I click on something every day.
I sent, what's his name from Tech Meme?
Gabe Rivera.
Gabe, I sent Gabe a note. I have been looking at the thing he made 20 years ago. It's its 20th anniversary, called Tech Meme. I look at it on and off pretty much every week. I look at Media Gazer, and those are both kind of, one's really media focused, the other's tech focused. Media Gazer and Tech Meme. I look at them all the time. And they are algorithmic and maybe human curated list of links that show Tech Meme.
Yeah, there's a lot of human.
Yeah, it's human curation.
Human intervention.
Bots.
Yeah, and they show all the other people that are writing about a particular item. The interface hasn't changed since I met Gabe a long time. I mean, it's never changed. And there's something wonderful about that. So congrats to him. And it's still, not everything becomes, it's a feed of its own, but not everything becomes,
Well, it's a human curated one. And I think the question is like whether there is, I kind of think there's a return of aggregation in some ways. I mean, it's just like being called curation.
Well, the things I think I like about it is it ends. It's a list of stories from today, and you can just consume them.
You know what product I of all the products Yahoo killed that I resent is they bought this company Sumly that became Yahoo News Digest, and it was built by this like 21-year-old English kid.
I think it made him rich, actually.
It did, and then I think he got out of media. That's a smart kid. But what it had finishability. It was like, here are the 10 things you need to know to be like up to date. And they actually, I talked to him once at some conference in Europe and heard him talking. He was a really impressive young guy, and they were optimizing to getting people finished. Like their thing was, how quickly can we get people finished with our product, rather than the incentives that we see now, which is how can we keep people hooked? How can we keep people more engaged? And we're seeing this go over into AI. That those chatbots, I keep telling these chatbots, would you stop telling me to put this thing into whether I want to put this thing into a Notion template or something? I have no idea where you got this idea. And they just keep with the engagement bait and the engagement bait to try to keep people hooked.
Brian, this is the type of talk that will get you that Facebook stare I was talking about.
Will it?
Well, yeah, it's just like the going philosophy in Silicon Valley is that you need to keep people on your product for as long as possible. Now, except if you're maybe like...
And that's totally opposite than what Google was built off.
Absolutely.
But the whole open web idea was that Google was going to be the arbiter, but their interests were to get people off Google.com as quickly as possible.
Because we used to sell utility, and now we're just selling engagement. Everybody's in the engagement business. I mean, even video games are being made to be so long because their success is tracked by how long you stay on that video game, rather than, you bought it. Why can't you be happy? Like if everybody buys your game and it's 2 hours long, that's fine. But it's, you make them hundreds of hours long so that you can keep that engagement going, because you don't want to kind of disappear in that flood of media and content. And it's.
So what is the comparison to that? How long was Ms. Pac-Man? Give it to something I can understand.
I don't think you could even finish Ms. Pac-Man. But these
It was
games,
infinite.
but here's the thing. It's an interesting example. So these were arcade games. They were made to actually be incredibly short run times where you would keep putting in quarters and keep dying, right? Pac-Man, I don't know, but there were other games that you definitely, if you played through them today and had like unlimited lives, you could finish them in an hour, right?
Hey,
And as a
Alex,
kid,
my
it felt
brother
amazing.
would always bring a stool up to the game Defender because he could play it, and Asteroids. He could play it till the arcade closed.
He was probably
on one
he probably
coin.
accelerated the demise of the arcade industry. There was like a
Yeah.
but
But hey, guys, can we just circle back to this, minor kind of news moment that was created around Google saying, look, the open web is dying?
It
Where?
did in a legal
Admitting.
filing.
it's
it
always in legal
admitted-
filings that they admit the obvious.
It admitted as much. It stated that the fact is that today the open web is already in rapid decline. Google, then the PR team scrambled and said, no, this was about ad tech. It's just, the advertising on the open web is in free fall, rapid decline, not the open web, which makes no sense whatsoever because the open web is supported by, advertising. And Google has choked off, traffic on the open web. I did a podcast earlier this week. I think it'll be released next week with Sherry Phillips. She said Forbes, depending on the day, is down 30 to 40% in traffic. That's from search. Ouch.
Well, they were the kings of SEO, so no one was better. Having said that, let's break down this Google thing a little bit.
Yeah.
So they said, we're not a monopoly because the open web is dying. Is that the logic?
The logic that they're saying is, are we a monopoly? Well, look at all of our competitors. They're rapidly diversifying, which is totally true, into connected TV, retail media, digital out of home, literally anything that is not putting ads on web pages. These SSPs,
Right.
DSPs, et cetera, don't have much
A
interest in it anymore.
person, both myself and Alex, that spent a long time trying to, maybe solve for the impossible, which is how to get a human being to do two things at once, which is basically the nature of display advertising, right? If it's not in the flow of your, journey or what you intend to do, it's asking you for your attention while you're doing something else. So the underlying base sort of human case for it is totally flawed. I think what's really interesting about the declaration that Google made is it's a kind of an admission that the primary model of monetization for the open web has failed. It just has. It's failed. And what has come in its place? Well, content and advertising have kind of merged as a consequence, or this long arc of the maturation of native, which became, publisher. Everybody's a publisher, the old John Battelle line, the complete democratization of content coming from anyone, be it a commercial interest or, someone with some, agenda. And so we've got two types of advertising that kind of survived on the open web after display failed. And one is content marketing, which is basically just most of that spectrum. And the second is anything that's performant, right? Anything that shows receipts, whether that's Google or affiliate or retail media.
Just to explain to some folks that might display all those like banner ads that you would see and
In the
what you're
periphery,
in the
pushing the
periphery of
page
the content,
down,
which you
coming up
still
from
see.
the bottom.
Which you'd still see, and then the performance stuff is anything that's a link that tracks, performance.
Yeah, what you get there is you get Google represents the best of
Search.
intent because they have
Yeah.
intent. You get Meta is the best of turning engagement into intent. That's what their algorithms do.
Or would you put
or
podcasters giving away their code to this underwear brand or whatever?
yeah,
It's the same.
influence as transaction or
Right, but
someone
that's
like at scale. It's Amazon doing using transactional data.
It's embedded within the content. Now, native advertising was supposed to be better than display because it was going to mimic the content. And that gets you so far, but then it's wait a second. Why are we keeping the chocolate and the peanut butter separate? Let's just make it all one product. And that is, the most powerful forms of native advertising / content marketing is it's just content. It's just part of it.
But for people to freak out that the open web is dying, I think is completely wrong. Because its nature is changing. But if you step back and look at the open web, and this is where I think we hit the browser conversation, Alex.
Okay, can I just give you a fact here?
Well, just
here,
a couple.
Troy?
Just
Okay, the
open
facts
web.
can wait.
Google sourced traffic to free ad-supported publishers dying. Okay, but the web as a delivery mechanism for commerce. The web is a delivery mechanism for content marketing. The web is a delivery mechanism for community, i.e. Reddit. The web as a mechanism to deliver AI experiences, how most of us experience open AI. The web for, booking travel, researching travel. The web for doing your banking. The web for paying your utility bill. Like all of that, alive and well. So to kind of put it all together because a bunch of sad publishers don't have banners that and are not getting traffic from Google is like the open web is dying is disingenuous.
Okay, open web publishing. How's that?
But it's a Casey Newton. It's a Casey Newton
Citibank.
gotcha headline, is what it is.
Okay. One of the things is Tolbit said that, and AI is absolutely part of the story, that human visitors to websites continue to decline, down 10% from Q1 to Q2. And in the first quarter, 1 in 200 visitors was AI. Again, according to Tolbit, they've got a dog in this fight. In the second quarter, it was 1 in 50. I mean, you can see the direction of travel.
I love it when you read advertising on the podcast.
Well, I'm trying to get Tolbit. We'll see. No, see if Jesse. I don't know. They raised 31 million. They must have
yeah, there's got to be a shekel
25K for a webinar.
Yeah.
Alex.
Yeah.
What is going on? First, we've got these definitional issues about the open web, and look, email is predicted to have been dead for the last 25 years. It seems fine as it is. And we're seeing a lot of friskiness on the browser front. So obviously that indicates if someone paid. If Atlassian paid $610 million for a browser nobody uses, literally nobody uses, then there must be some value there.
Yeah, so Atlassian bought the browser company who makes Arc, a browser I use, which is just built on Chrome, just had extra features for power users, and they switched to building Dia, which was the AI-powered browser. They always had ambitions to build a consumer product, but they just were bought by Atlassian, and now. The CEO has been pretty transparent through his thought process, and he's now admitted that they're no longer pursuing the consumer product, but they're going towards an enterprise product, which I think is really telling. When you look at the open web, we're seeing the consumer, let's maybe call it the consumer web, losing dominance as people use more and more of their phones to consume media, or other devices like an Apple TV or an iPad, but mostly the phone. And AI is also kind of eating away at that because it adds this layer between the content and you. But in the business side, on the enterprise, I would hazard to say that the vast majority of people just install a browser and then use everything through the web. It's on your laptop, you set up Chrome and you have your Jira tickets and your Google Docs and your Gmail. And even Figma, which is a design app, will run in the browser. So the web itself is thriving on the enterprise. It's a great, when you're managing hundreds or thousands of people, it's a really great way to essentially manage everything. You don't have, you only have to security patch the browser. Everything else is kind of running off servers. When you onboard someone, you give them a browser and a laptop, and then they log in. It's easy to disconnect them when you let them go. So the browser is actually a really great thing for the enterprise. And I think that's what Atlassian is seeing here. And they're building this Dia browser, which is essentially like Chrome with a chatbot on the right that you can tell it to do things. I started using it to test it. It's pretty good, but it's essentially just Chrome with ChatGPT on the right. And I feel like if you're an enterprise and you can get maybe, rather than just using Chrome and getting an enterprise-only browser that's managed by Atlassian that has centralized user management, that also maybe kind of like Trojan horses, like some AI features so that your employees start using AI more regularly because it's been hard to get AI adoption going. I think it's a great move. And then for Atlassian, they become kind of the entryway to people's business lives. But, that's to say, on the enterprise side, the enterprise web is thriving. It's thriving. It's like, you can run your entire business just on the web. Yeah. And it was Salesforce's original promise, right? Salesforce used to have these no software ads. And that was kind of the big thing at the time, the beginning of the Web 2.0 era, where we could build websites into applications. I think it's fully matured and it's not going anywhere except on phones, but people don't do much business.
I get that on the enterprise side. But can I bring it back to the web publishers and their sad programmatic display banners for just a minute? Humor me here. There is the economic foundations of the old open web are crumbling. I mean, when you're down 30 to 40% and SEO is a major part of your model, that's tough. And with AI, training on a lot of this data, it is still unclear how the economic incentives are going to be realigned. Google's incentives are less to send free traffic to publishers to monetize through programmatic. And okay, too bad, so sad. That's one position. But I don't know. I'd like a thriving web publishing ecosystem to survive too, not just the enterprise web. This week, there was an interesting announcement of a new group that is trying to use the RSS standard to create what is called really simple licensing. It's an open content licensing standard that allows publishers to basically tell bots, whether they should scrape their sites, what they should scrape, and then what the financial terms are going to be to get access to that content. This has got backing from Reddit, Yahoo, Medium, Quora, People Inc., the artist formerly known as Meredith. This is basically updating the old system of robots.txt to add licensing and royalty terms. It sounds great. It depends on whether these AI companies are going to abide by it or just work around. Any thoughts on this, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the vinyl industry. Text is the vinyl industry. I'm sorry.
What about email text? I just sent out like 1,500 words.
I feel
should have saved myself the trouble.
At some point, like text becomes, and look, everything's going to go that way at some point, probably with AI, where you can kind of remix everything and the type of content that is like, I can see my behaviors and I find that my behaviors usually kind of seem to kind of become more mainstream over time. I don't go to any sources for information. Most of the stuff I read is filtered through AI now, or I go to Reddit. I said last time, I think my breaking news place is Reddit. That's where the comments are. It's happening in real time.
You really like to do that? Like for what?
Yeah,
like
sure.
That's like, it's so inefficient.
Well, when the Charlie Kirk thing happened, I just went to Reddit and I opened the one of the posts there, and the comments were way faster than anything else I was getting as to what's happening. Oh, the guy got caught. The guy got released.
Is that enjoyable? What is that?
It's
is
an
that
organized
the gaming portal? Because I'm just like, I find that stuff
but
annoying
why would
now.
it doesn't have to be enjoyable. I just want the information. It's enjoyable
even
in a way
if
that
like
is,
70% of it turns out to be inaccurate at the time. I'm like, I can wait a day.
But if I was going to add something else to Troy's media singularity, is that people have also blended community into that. I think that's why podcasts work so well. Like somebody called podcast friendship porn, where you listen to people and you feel like they're your friends and you're not lonely. And I feel the same way when a big piece of news happens. I go on Reddit and I have all these random strangers that are commenting on it, but I feel part of a community, and that feels 100 times more validating, valid, entertaining, comforting than watching CNN.
I agree.
And there's this.
Yeah, it's the difference, Brian, between a GUI and a command line. Alex likes command line.
That's graphical user interface and command line. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel that the sense of like personality. We keep talking about personality, but we haven't really discussed like the relationships that people build, and it's an added thing that you get from this new kind of like amorphous media that you did. Like I like some of the people I listen to. Like I listen to them because I feel like I have this relationship with them, and so I find that my news sources I go to is that, or if I don't get that, just give me the raw feed, just like ChatGPT. What happened? Go everywhere.
But guys, the interesting thing, what's it called? RSS. What's the new RSS called?
RSL.
RSL. So whether it's RSL or the Cloudflare attempt to create a marketplace around content, monetizing it for AI, or the Tollbit, efforts that I'm not up to speed on. You got to have that marketplace. You have to have an ability. You have to have buyers. And Google's not a buyer yet, and they're probably a third of the market more. I think that the idea that every Tom, Dick, Harry, getting their content being part of a giant toll system, I think is probably unlikely. Having said all that, I think that one of the biggest weaknesses with complete adoption of OpenAI is its ability to do the current, right, news. And you see, if you use it a lot, you'll see that you really long for it to be authenticated to your news sources so that it picks up all that signal effortlessly and feeds it back to you. And I think that that's an unsolved part of this new service.
So Google is experimenting with something. I don't know if it's widely available, but it's basically preferred news sources where people can identify their preferred news sources, and then that becomes, ranked higher in what they
in the
see.
generative response.
Yeah. So I think that the Dia browser is interesting because it's early days. It's just like a beta piece of software, but you have commands that you can add, and you can ask it. People create commands and they put them on the marketplace, and some of them are about like verify. So whenever you're on a news source, you have this little thing on the right, and you can type /verify or / whatever you want to call the command. And that command is just a prompt that you can edit. And in that prompt, you say, use these sources, use this bias, right? And it's an interesting look at how news is going to be consumed.
And people are going to keep publishing even if they're not compensated in links like they're used to. Like if you're Forbes and you want to be the kind of canonical, publisher on, billionaire rankings, you're still incented to do that, even if you're not getting all the clicks to it.
Yeah, because it's like they're selling integrated media packages. They're about like 25% events at this point. They do 220 events a year. I mean, that's a high octane events business.
Right.
And these franchises can go everywhere.
Text is going to be a rough business, though. I
Right,
really feel. It is though, because like look at like Architectural Digest, for example. It feels to me like right now 97% of Architectural Digest, presence is their YouTube videos. Those house visits. Like that's the ones that are kind of
maybe not a great example because people didn't read it anyway. It was really about the pictures.
Yeah, it's about big picture.
I mean, photos are also like on the way out, right? Like I think there are just two modalities that make more sense. It's like video, which is like all absorb your attention, and then audio, which is you can participate in people's lives.
Yeah, and people like pictures. I get.
Well, which is maybe a good segue to the
Apple thing. Let's go.
The Apple.
One quick note on that. That's why Miami is the future, because Troy was very frustrated when he was here because he was looking for a bookstore, and they pointed him to like a Taschen, which is, I believe he called it. It's like adult picture books, right?
It was ridiculous. And the Taschen bookstore was, I mean, to get to a bookstore in Miami, you have to travel like 7 miles.
Yeah. It's the future. It's the future. Words are out.
I've got a hard stop, so
Let's talk about Apple real quick.
I'm going to speed run it. Okay.
Speedrun it. They came out with like thin phones, 5 blades, AirPods.
They came out with a new iPhone 17. They came out with a new iPhone Pro, which I'm excited about. It comes in orange, but it's got like it's got stuff that you wanted, bigger batteries.
That orange is a huge mistake.
I'm going to get the orange.
It looks like a discount item at the Arc'teryx store.
Yeah, maybe. That's right. It's Pro, man.
Yeah.
That format of the kind of pre-recorded high production value zooming in and out is becoming really tired. I think it's just like it's easy to stop paying attention. And the other thing that I noticed, I really felt like at this time, only in a couple of ways, Apple used to be Apple taught everyone how to communicate a product, which is like, hey, this is a need. This is a need you have. You might not know it. And here's this utility that, that would make your life better. And here's, you can do it with our product. And there's very little of that because I think like, you can tap out your audience, you can tap out your customer base, but I think they've tapped out their utility ratio. Like these phones do everything you need them to. The phone 3 years ago still does everything 99% of people need them to. So that's why they spend a lot of time talking about like vapor chambers, dissipating heat. Like I've never really felt like my phone gets too hot. Like that's gonna and the pictures are slightly better, and everything's really impressive, but nothing really matters, including that thin phone. The only one that really I think is, and it's going to be Apple's like sleeper hit over the next decade, I think, is the AirPods, which now have like
they can translate, right? That's amazing.
Heart rate tracking, translation, that type of thing feels
when
like
that
real
nails,
utility.
that's going to be a holy shit thing. When you can go to a different country and get real-time translation from someone.
Nobody does that. It's bullshit.
Well, nobody does it because you can't do it.
You can wave your arms and everybody speaks English.
Well, maybe at places you go to, Troy.
Yeah. Okay, let me do my quick 2-second review.
Exactly.
First of all, when is my folding phone coming? Okay. Now, the next great phone will be the Air Fold. The Air is just a preview of the folding phone. It's got to come. I want it, and I need it soon, Alex. The headphones show hints of the future, absolutely, right? Like, and that you can track your vitals through the headphones, like a little kind of sensor on behind your ear is remarkable. I'm getting them, but the headphones really merge with the glasses.
The AirPods, yeah.
The AirPods. They're going to merge. Like it's a device that can sit without interruption on your face. They're going to be an integrated product.
Well,
soon.
I mean, you could see the technology in the Air, which is incredibly thin, where like basically the whole phone, the screen and the battery is most of the phone, and the whole phone is in that little bump at the back, right?
Right.
So for sure, I mean, it is absolutely telling. I just think that, like, to me, in contrast, I saw Dyson. If anybody wants to watch it, Dyson did their little video about their new product.
The broom vacuum?
Yeah. And he comes on stage, and it's this old man, and he talks about how thin his motor is and how it goes into the thing. And he's there on stage talking about the product that he knows about.
Yeah,
and there was literally in the Apple event, there was literally a line that sounded like, "We've extended the capabilities to allow for better innovation," or something like that. It was the most like vapid shit you've ever heard, rather than saying, "Look how tiny this vacuum is. Now you can fit it in your closet."
A lot of these things, like I always just wonder whether, look, I think men's attachment, particularly to gadgets, reminds me of how a lot of women are attached to shoes. It's just like the equivalent. I mean, I think your wife actually, when we had dinner, made a great observation that like men with geopolitics is exactly like astrology with women. Like, I don't understand personally the obsession with consumer gadgets. Like, I really could care less about all of this stuff. But I wonder if it's just like the end of that era of being excited about these gadgets.
Well, the use case that they lean on most heavily through the product line is fitness, because I think that everybody wants to be, stronger, better looking and fitter. And I think there's lots of practical applications of technology to fitness. I think the one area where there's a huge number of use cases, Alex, that they don't explore, and I think it's because of, the sort of perils of the privacy implications, are recording. Like how a device and your phone like becomes granola on steroids and processes your words and turns them into things that you keep, that you summarize, that give you next steps. All those things are huge use cases. People want to turn it into a medallion around your neck. And Apple, I think, is terrified of that territory because it's gross, quite frankly.
Well, they made a big deal about privacy. They've been marketing themselves on privacy for the last 10 years.
I think we're getting. I think there's a point where the utility, and Apple's been good at that. I mean, Apple managed to make Bluetooth headset work. Like, you remember what a Bluetooth headset made? You would never have children, right? Like, it was so dorky. But when the design and the utility kind of reach a stage, people will get past some of their qualms. I feel like, Apple's building these incredible processors in it that they have to sell as like, is going to do this 2.5. Nobody thinks their iPhone is slow right now, unless you have more than a 3-year-old iPhone. You never think your iPhone is slow, but they're pushing and pushing and pushing. because at some point, all of this stuff can be done on device. And when it can be done on device, I think it passes the threshold of like privacy that you feel much more
But
comfortable
honestly,
with.
like new phones are not going to excite regular people. Most people hate the amount of time that they're spending on their phones. Like I just don't see like.
Oh, and the data's in how bad it is for us.
If they announce like some kind of humanoid robot or something, yes, do the like big like launch. I would love to hear. They're going to do a car, amazing. But a lot of the stuff is like I look at, and just from as a non-gadget person, I'm like, who cares? Like, okay, incremental little changes.
They're playing the feed play. They do this event. They get all the little media shrimp to feast on this little thing.
The little media shrimp. Did you hear that, Brett? You're one of them.
The little media shrimp go out.
Ben Thompson's the media shrimp.
And kind of feed the coral somewhere else. And then it ends up on a feed. And like my dad who listened, I mean, my dad's probably paying more attention to tech than most people, but like, he asked about the Apple event. I think people heard about the thin phone and the orange phone.
Is he a blogger?
My dad? No, he's not a blogger. He's an avid listener, Troy.
All right, Alex, do you have to go? Because we got to.
I do have to.
We gotta round this off with a couple things.
Okay.
Good product.
Well, I'll do one little brief one before good product, and it won't take.
Okay.
It's just Rupert got what he wanted, as he always does.
Yeah,
that's
and
crazy.
even
He's a baller.
the guy sees the cube.
What is he? 95 or
Rupert
94?
Murdoch sees the cube, and
Still dating.
The little Nepo children were under this kind of foolish illusion that they could do a kind of open heart liberal transplant on daddy's mean conservative, empire, which was like
I'm not sure that was
it's like
their
a
plan.
rich,
I mean,
it's a rich kid fantasy.
Yeah.
And
Also, like, excuse me, when you're like literally weeks away from like meeting your end, the thing you really want to do is fight your.
I wouldn't be so sure of that.
Oh, and that's true. But I like the thing you want to fight for is like, I really want to get into a lawsuit with my children so Fox News remains right wing. It's kind of like, oh, I'm so happy I spent my last
This reassured
month
me
on
that billionaires are not like the rest of us. They just are not.
at some point I would go like, you know what, fuck it. Let's hang up.
No.
Let's all have Thanksgiving together. Let's let them, fuck it.
My mom lived to like
great
102.
point. I'll give you that
He's
one.
going to
I'll
be
give you
with
that one.
us for a while longer, and he's going to throw money at the problem.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably being he's being uploaded somewhere for sure.
I will give Rupert Murdoch has handled Trump better than any oligarch around. I think he has not gotten sucked into the orbit. He has used his leverage. He's used the Wall Street Journal in very strategic ways, either the editorial board or, let's face it, the news reporting on Trump has been tough. And this week we saw Trump has sued the Journal and Rupert personally for defamation over their story about the Epstein birthday book drawing. And that surfaced this week and sure backs up. The Journal looks good for him on that front too.
Yeah.
It's bad drawing.
The bad part, the fly in the ointment, is DT. His RFK is really going through with wanting to curtail, if not outright ban, direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertising. In my time watching Fox News and Brett Baer at my parents', that's like a good 2/3 of their ads. So
Right.
Yeah.
okay.
Well, we'll quickly move to good I have a little thing that touched me. There's this company, Alex, I think you like the Mischief, MSCH.
Yep. Yeah.
Right? They're like what Mr. Beast would be if he was actually cool. And they do all kinds of great shit, notably.
They're an agency now too.
They hit a original Picasso in hundreds of copies of this thing called the real copy of Poisson by Pablo Picasso. They have that thing called the Museum of Forgeries. They've turned one of those stabilizing boots into a fashion. Just fun, goofy shit. Last week they partnered with Hot Wheels to do something called Not Wheels, which was a Hot Wheels car that looked like something like an early 90s, Japanese import that was all banged up, had 3 different wheels, and, it was dented and rusted and kind of amateurly repaired. And it sold out in like 3 seconds. So it was like a kind of, destroyed little Hot Wheels. And it was just like a really sweet beautiful idea. These guys are really great. They're really great.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's way more interesting than what's the other brand that does all these drops. Like people your age go there, they wait in line to get sneakers. It's the red box logo in white. Supreme, yeah.
People my age, old men go there.
Private equity people. I mean, that's
old. Yeah.
Supreme is in its private equity phase of life. There's the harvesting is on big time. Kith is in the same private equity phase of its existence. Every brand must pass through it.
Brian, are we making good conversation a new segment? Is that a proposal?
I mean, I was thinking about it. I just wanted to highlight a conversation that I came across that was good. It was Derek Thompson had it with this neurologist and author, Suzanne O'Sullivan. She's just written a book, Age of Diagnosis, and it makes the argument that, you know, when we talk about chronic disease, we're actually stretching the definitions of conditions like, say, ADHD, autism, because we make them all on a spectrum. And we live at a time where people want to label things that many people from many generations have gone through. And that this ends up diverting resources from the more acute and serious cases and leads people to using these medical diagnoses as some kind of like label or even cover, honestly, for just regular. It leads
to my daughter mainlining Adderall.
Yeah, sometimes it gets you access to an Adderall prescription. It was a very good conversation. I think, you know, Derek is really great at these because he's genuinely interested in the subject matter he covers. And I think when we talk about media now, one of the great things about it is that it rewards energy. And if you bring energy to a subject, I think it does so much better. Whereas traditional journalism often, you know, you're told to be both a generalist and then removed from the subject matter, and people end up responding to energy. And this was a really good conversation.
Yeah.
Recommend everyone check it out.
Well, Alex,
and you know what I think?
He adored his ADHD.
Well, it's part of the identity. It becomes an identity because we've lost religion, and so now
and also like ADHD and autism are like code for I'm smart but low functioning.
Well, pretty high functioning.
I have severe procrastination. Like nobody gives me. I
think it's true, but like with everything, it's multifaceted. I think part of it is also that we've done a good job as a society to become more comfortable to talk about mental health and things that, you know, that bother us. And at some point, that's good too. You know, like people talk about depression and anxiety more than they did, and they do more shit about it. It used to be you just go to the bar and get drunk and punch a guy.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Anyway, it is a good conversation because it is more nuanced than that. It's not just making fun of how everyone has peanut allergies now. I mean, like I would have thought that there had been multiple kids dead in the schoolyard because nobody asked if anyone had a peanut allergy at St. Genevieve's, but somehow the kids all survived.
Nice.
Check it out. Derek Thompson, Plain English. Very good.
This was also a good conversation. Great episode.
Yeah, good episode.
Thanks. Like and subscribe.
Get
us on the fucking feeds. We're all part of this media
singularity.
Singularity.
All right. See you guys.
Okay.
Bye.